I saw my ex's mom sitting alone on a blind date. Then I sat beside her and did the unthinkable. He did not plan to be there that evening. It was one of those days when work felt heavy and going home felt even heavier. His small apartment was too quiet these days, filled with memories he did not want to face. So after finishing work, he walked without thinking and found himself entering a familiar cafe near the city center. It was a warm place, known for soft lights, slow music, and people who came to escape their own thoughts for a while. He ordered a simple coffee and chose a table near the window. Outside, cars passed by and people hurried along the street, each carrying their own stories. He took a deep breath, hoping the calm atmosphere would help him relax, but life had other plans. As he looked around the cafe, his eyes suddenly stopped on a woman sitting alone a few tables away. At first, he thought his mind was playing tricks on him. But the longer he looked, the more certain he became. It was her, his ex's mother. She was sitting straight, hands folded neatly on the table, wearing a light-colored dress and a soft scarf around her neck. She looked carefully dressed, as if she had made a special effort. In front of her was an untouched glass of water. Her phone lay beside it, screen facing up. Every few minutes she glanced at it, then looked toward the entrance. His heart skipped a beat. Seeing her brought back memories he had not visited in a long time. Sunday dinners at their house, the way she always asked if he had eaten enough, how she defended him gently whenever her daughter complained about him. She had always been kind, warm, and respectful to him, even after the breakup. The breakup. That thought alone made his chest feel tight. He and his ex had not ended on good terms. Words were said that could not be taken back. Feelings were hurt on both sides. Eventually, they went their separate ways, and he believed that chapter of his life was closed forever. He had avoided places where he might run into her or her family. Seeing her mother now felt like opening a door he had locked long ago. He looked away, hoping she would not notice him. He told himself he should finish his coffee and leave. This was not his place anymore. Whatever was happening in her life was none of his business, but when he looked again, something felt wrong. Time passed, 10 minutes, then 15. People came in, laughing, talking, sitting with friends or dates, but no one joined her table. Her smile slowly faded, replaced by a look of confusion and quiet disappointment. She checked her phone again, this time with a small frown. That was when he realized it. She was waiting for someone. A blind date, perhaps. The idea made him uncomfortable but also sad. She looked nervous, hopeful, and increasingly embarrassed as time went on. He noticed how she adjusted her scarf, how she tried to look busy by staring out the window, pretending she wasn't waiting. He remembered how, years ago, she once told him after dinner, "Being alone is not always easy, but we learn to carry it quietly." At the time, he hadn't understood what she meant. Now, watching her sit there alone, he understood too well. His coffee grew cold, untouched. A quiet battle started inside him. Part of him said, "Leave now. Do not get involved. This could only cause trouble. What if someone misunderstood? What if his ex found out? What if this reopened old wounds?" But another part of him felt something stronger than fear. Empathy. He knew what it felt like to be left waiting. He knew the sharp pain of rejection, especially when it happened in public. He imagined how long it must have taken her to gather courage to agree to a blind date, how carefully she must have chosen her clothes, how hopeful she must have felt walking into the cafe. And now she was sitting there alone. A waiter passed by her table and asked softly if she wanted to order something. She forced a polite smile and said, "I'll wait a little longer." The waiter nodded and walked away. That small moment hit him deeply. He looked down at his hands. They were shaking slightly. He told himself he could simply walk out and forget what he saw. No one would blame him. This was not his responsibility. Yet his feet did not move. Instead, he stood up. For a brief second, he froze, unsure if he was really going to do this. He felt every step as he walked toward her table, his heart pounding louder with each one. He worried she might react badly. He worried she might ask why he was there. He worried about things that did not yet exist. She noticed him when he was only a step away. Her eyes widened slightly in surprise. For a moment, she just stared at him, as if trying to understand whether he was real or just a memory. Then recognition slowly settled in. "Oh," she said softly, "it's you." "Yes," he replied, his voice calm but gentle. "Hello, I hope I'm not disturbing you." She shook her head quickly. No, I was just surprised." There was an awkward pause. He could feel other people around them, but at that moment it felt like the cafe had disappeared. "I saw you sitting here," he said carefully, choosing his words with care. "And I thought I should at least say hello." Her smile returned, but this time it was weaker. "That's kind of you," he hesitated, then took a small risk. "May I sit for a moment, only if you're comfortable?" She looked at the empty chair across from her. For a brief second he thought she might say no, but then she nodded. "Please," she said, "go ahead." He sat down slowly, as if afraid the moment might break if he moved too fast. They started with simple conversation. He asked how she had been. She asked about his work. They spoke politely, carefully avoiding the topic of her daughter. The tension slowly eased, replaced by something familiar and warm. As they talked, he noticed how relaxed her shoulders became, how she stopped checking her phone, how the embarrassment slowly left her face. After a while, she laughed softly at something he said. It was a sound he remembered well. It reminded him of better times when things were simpler. But deep inside, he knew this moment was fragile. He also knew that by sitting there, he had already done something unexpected, something that could change more than just one evening. And yet, as he looked at her smiling across the table, he felt something else rise above all fear, a quiet certainty. Sometimes, doing the right thing does not come with clear rules. Sometimes, it begins with simply not walking away. And that night in that small cafe, he chose to stay. He did not plan to stay long. At first, he told himself he would sit for a few minutes, help ease the awkward moment, then politely excuse himself. That was the safe thing to do. That was what made sense. But as time passed, he realized nothing about this situation was simple anymore. The cafe felt warmer now. The quiet music in the background blended with the low sound of conversations around them. Cups clinked. Someone laughed softly at another table. Life continued as normal for everyone else, but for him, time felt slower. She folded her hands on the table and smiled at him again. "I didn't expect to see you here," she said honestly. "Neither did I," he replied. "I just came to clear my head." She nodded as if she understood more than he said. Some days are like that. There was a short pause. He could feel her curiosity, but also her caution. She was being polite, careful, just like he was. After a moment, she took a deep breath. "I suppose you can tell I was waiting for someone." He did not want to make her uncomfortable, so he answered gently, "I guessed. I hope that's okay." She gave a small, embarrassed laugh. "It's fine. I'm too old to pretend these things don't happen." "You're not old," he said without thinking. She smiled at that, this time more sincerely. "That's kind of you." She glanced at her phone again, then turned it face down on the table. That small action said a lot. It was as if she had accepted that the person she was waiting for was not coming. "I don't think he's going to show up," she said quietly. "I'm sorry," he replied. "That's not easy." She shrugged, but her eyes gave her away. "I told myself not to expect much. Still, you hope." He understood that feeling deeply. A waiter came by again and asked if they wanted to order. She hesitated, then looked at him. He could see the question in her eyes, unspoken but clear. Should she stay? Should she leave? "If you'd like," he said gently, "we can just have coffee." "No pressure," she smiled. "I'd like that." They both ordered coffee. When the waiter left, the mood shifted slightly. It no longer felt like he was simply saving her from an awkward situation. Now it felt like they were choosing to share the moment. They talked about simple things at first: the weather, the cafe, how busy the city had become. He asked about her work and she told him she was doing part-time consulting now, enjoying the freedom after many years of strict routines. "It's strange," she said. "You spend most of your life taking care of others. Then suddenly you have to learn how to take care of yourself." "That's not easy," he said, "but it sounds like you're doing well." "I'm learning," she replied. "Some days are better than others." He noticed how open she was being. There was no pretending, no acting, just honest words spoken softly across a small table. After a while she asked, "And you? How have you been?" He hesitated. He did not want to say too much, but he also did not want to lie. "I've been managing, work keeps me busy," she nodded slowly. "Busy can be good, it keeps the mind from wandering too much." "Yes," he said, "sometimes." Another pause followed, heavier this time. Both of them knew there was a subject they were avoiding. She was the one who spoke first. "You know," she said carefully, "I've always wanted to say thank you." He looked up, surprised. "For what?" "For how you treated our family," she said. "Especially me. You were always respectful, even when things ended badly." He lowered his eyes. "I wish things had ended better," she sighed. "Life rarely gives us clean endings." Her words settled between them. There was no anger in her voice, only acceptance. "I don't blame you," she continued, "and I don't blame her either. We all do our best with what we know at the time." Hearing that lifted something heavy from his chest. He did not realize how much guilt he had been carrying until that moment. "Thank you for saying that," he said quietly. Their coffee arrived. The warmth of the cup in his hands grounded him. For the first time that evening, he felt fully present. As they drank, he noticed something else. People around them glanced over occasionally. From the outside, it probably looked like a normal date. Two people sitting close, talking comfortably. Anyone watching would assume this was exactly what it appeared to be. That thought made him uneasy. He leaned back slightly and said, "I hope this isn't awkward for you." She smiled softly. "It is a little unusual," she admitted. "But not unpleasant. I just don't want to cause trouble." She met his eyes. "Kindness doesn't cause trouble. People's assumptions do." Her words surprised him. She had always been thoughtful, but hearing her say this now felt meaningful. "Besides," she added, "you didn't have to sit with me. You chose to, that matters." He nodded slowly. "I just didn't want you to feel alone." She looked at him for a long moment, then said, "That means more than you know." The conversation shifted again, becoming lighter. She shared a funny story about a cooking disaster she had the previous week. He laughed, genuinely amused. In return, he told her about a mistake he made at work that turned into a lesson. Time passed without them noticing. At one point, she glanced at the clock on the wall and seemed surprised. "I didn't realize it had been this long." "Me neither," he said. She smiled. "I suppose that's a good sign." He agreed, but inside his thoughts were racing. He knew he was walking on delicate ground. Every minute he stayed made the situation more complicated. Still, he did not feel regret. The waiter came by again and asked if they wanted anything else. She looked at him, waiting for his response. "Just the check, please," he said. She opened her mouth to protest, but he gently raised his hand. "Please, let me." She hesitated, then nodded. "All right, thank you." As they waited, she said softly, "Tonight could have been very hard for me." "I know," he replied. "You didn't have to step in," she continued. "But you did," he shrugged slightly. "Anyone would have." She shook her head. "Not everyone would." When the check arrived, he paid without making a show of it. It was not about money, it was about dignity. About allowing her to leave the cafe without feeling rejected or forgotten. As they stood up to leave, he felt a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. He knew this moment would not simply disappear once they walked out the door. Outside, the air was cooler. Streetlights reflected softly on the pavement. She adjusted her scarf and turned to him. "Thank you for tonight," she said again. "You turned something uncomfortable into something kind." He smiled. "I'm glad I could." They stood there for a moment, unsure how to end the encounter. "Well," she said gently, "I should head home." "Yes," he replied, "take care." "You too," she said. As she walked away, he watched her until she disappeared into the crowd. He felt a quiet weight settle in his chest, not sadness, not happiness, but awareness. By choosing to sit beside her, he had crossed a line he never expected to cross. And though the evening had ended calmly, he sensed that its impact had only just begun. He turned and walked in the opposite direction, knowing that what he had done was simple on the surface, but meaningful in ways he would only understand later. The next morning, he woke up with the strange feeling that something inside him had shifted. It was not regret, and it was not excitement either. It was more like a quiet echo of the night before, repeating itself in his thoughts. As he lay in bed staring at the ceiling, moments from the cafe returned again and again. Her surprised smile, the sound of her soft laughter, the calm way she spoke about life. He got up, made his usual breakfast and prepared for work, but his routine felt different now. Even while brushing his teeth, his mind wandered back to that evening. He wondered if she had reached home safely. He wondered if she felt lighter afterward, or if the loneliness returned as soon as the door closed behind her. At work, he tried to focus. Emails came in, meetings followed, and colleagues spoke around him, but he felt slightly distant from it all. During lunch, he found himself staring at his phone, tempted to message someone he hadn't spoken to in a long time. He stopped himself. That would only complicate things further. He told himself to move on. It was just one evening, a kind moment, nothing more. But life rarely listens to such plans. That afternoon, as he was leaving the office, his phone buzzed. He paused mid-step and looked at the screen. The message was short and unexpected. "Hello, I hope you're well. I just wanted to thank you again for yesterday. It truly meant a lot." He stood still for a few seconds, reading it again. She had found his number somehow, perhaps from an old contact saved long ago. The message was polite, warm, and carried no hidden meaning. Still, his heart beat a little faster. He replied carefully, "I'm glad you're well. I'm happy I could help. I hope today has been kinder to you." The reply came a few minutes later. "It has. I treated myself to a walk this morning. Small victories, I suppose." He smiled at that. Small victories indeed. Over the next few days they exchanged short messages. Nothing too personal, nothing too frequent, just gentle check-ins. A shared joke about bad coffee. A comment about the changing weather. Simple things that felt surprisingly comforting. At the same time, something else stirred quietly in the background. Memories. He began thinking more about the past. About his relationship with her daughter, about where things went wrong, about what he had learned since then. He did not feel the sharp pain he once felt. Instead, there was a calm reflection, as if time had softened the edges. One evening while cooking dinner, his phone rang unexpectedly. He hesitated before answering, then picked up. "Hello," he said. "Hi," came her voice. "I hope I'm not calling at a bad time." "No," he replied honestly. "It's fine." "I just thought texting sometimes feels too distant," she said. "I wanted to hear a familiar voice." He understood that more than he expected. They talked for a while, about her day, about his work, about simple, everyday things. There was no rush, no pressure. Just conversation flowing naturally. At one point she grew quiet. He sensed something was on her mind. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course." "Did it feel strange for you," she asked gently, "sitting with me that night?" He took a moment before answering. "At first, yes, I wasn't sure if it was the right thing to do. And now, he said slowly, "I'm glad I stayed." She exhaled softly. "So am I." That honesty created a deeper understanding between them. Not something romantic, not something improper, just two people acknowledging a shared human moment. As days passed, they met once more, this time by chance at a bookstore. The surprise on both their faces quickly turned into laughter. They walked through the aisles together, commenting on book titles, sharing favorite authors. It felt natural, easy. Someone who saw them might have assumed they were close friends, perhaps even something more, but they both knew the truth was simpler and deeper at the same time. During that meeting, she spoke openly about her life after her divorce, about learning to live alone, about the fear of growing invisible in a world that often celebrates youth and noise. "I spent so many years being a wife and a mother," she said as they sat near the window. "Now I'm learning who I am outside of those roles." "That takes courage," he replied. She smiled sadly. "Some days I feel brave, other days I just feel tired." He listened, truly listened. He did not interrupt or try to fix anything. He just let her words exist. In return, he shared his own struggles, the guilt he carried, the feeling of failure after the breakup, the fear that maybe he had missed his chance at something meaningful. "You didn't fail," she said firmly. "You learned. That matters." Her words stayed with him. But not everything remained quiet for long. One evening, his phone buzzed with a name he had not seen in months, his ex. He stared at the screen, heart pounding. He considered ignoring it, but something told him that would only make things worse. He answered. "Hello," he said. "We need to talk," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge beneath it. "Okay," he replied. "About what?" "About my mother," she said. His stomach tightened. "I heard you two have been spending time together." There it was. He took a deep breath. "I didn't mean for anything to be misunderstood." There was a pause on the other end. "I know," she said. "That's why I'm calling, not accusing." They talked for a long time. He explained everything honestly, how he saw her mother alone, how he didn't want her to feel embarrassed, how the conversations that followed were about kindness, not crossing boundaries. To his surprise, his ex listened. "She told me what you did," she said finally. "She said you treated her with respect, that you helped her feel human again." He swallowed hard. "I won't lie," she continued. "At first it shocked me, but after thinking about it, I'm grateful." That word, grateful, was not one he expected to hear. "She's been lonely," she said. "She doesn't always show it. What you did mattered." "I never wanted to hurt anyone," he said. "I know," she replied softly. "That's why I wanted to say thank you." When the call ended, he sat quietly for a long time, phone still in his hand. A weight he had carried for months seemed to lift. Later that night, he messaged her mother. "I spoke with her today," he wrote. "I wanted you to know everything is okay." The reply came shortly after. "I'm glad," she wrote. "Thank you for being honest. You've brought peace where I didn't expect it." As weeks passed, their conversations became less frequent but no less meaningful. They both understood the importance of balance, of knowing when to step forward and when to step back. One afternoon, they met again for coffee. This time the cafe was different, quieter. Sunlight streamed through the windows. "I've been thinking," she said, stirring her cup. "That night changed something for me." "How so?" he asked. "It reminded me that kindness can come from unexpected places," she said. "And that I don't have to disappear just because one chapter ended." He nodded. "It reminded me, too, that doing the right thing doesn't always follow rules." They sat in comfortable silence for a while. When they stood to leave, she placed a hand lightly on his arm. "Whatever happens next," she said, "know that you did something good." He smiled. "So did you." As he walked away, he realized that part 3 of his story was not about complication or confusion. It was about understanding. About closure that came not through distance, but through compassion. And deep down, he knew this journey was not finished yet. Life slowly returned to its normal rhythm, but something inside him remained different. He could feel it in small moments. When he walked past the cafe without stopping, when he sat alone at night with his thoughts, when he smiled at strangers a little more easily than before. What had happened was not loud or dramatic, yet its effect stayed with him. He and her mother did not meet often now. Both of them understood the importance of distance. Still, once in a while, they exchanged a short message or shared a quiet coffee in a public place. There was no confusion between them. Only respect, calm, and a shared understanding that some connections exist only to teach us something, not to last forever. One evening, while walking home from work, he saw an elderly man struggling to carry grocery bags. Without thinking, he stepped forward and helped. The man thanked him with tired eyes and a grateful smile. As he continued walking, he realized how natural that act felt. Kindness no longer felt like a decision. It felt like a habit he was slowly forming. But peace never arrives without being tested. A few weeks later, he received another call from his ex. This time her voice sounded more serious. "My mother has decided to go on another date," she said. He paused, unsure how to react. "That's good, isn't it?" "Yes," she replied, "but she's nervous." That last experience shook her more than she admitted. He understood. Being left waiting can leave a deep mark. "She keeps saying she's fine," his ex continued. "But I know her. I was hoping you might talk to her, not to advise, just to remind her she's not invisible." He hesitated. This was delicate ground. "I don't want to cross any boundaries," he said carefully. "I know," she replied. "That's why I'm asking. You know how to listen." That night, he sat quietly with his phone in his hand, thinking. He didn't want to step into a role that wasn't his. At the same time, he remembered how alone she had looked in that cafe. He sent a simple message. "I heard you might be stepping into something new. I just wanted to wish you courage. Whatever you choose, you deserve respect." The reply came much later than usual. "Thank you," she wrote. "That means more than you know." Days passed. Then one afternoon she asked if they could meet briefly. He agreed. They met at a small park where people walked their dogs and children played nearby. It felt safe, open, and calm. She looked different that day, not sad, not nervous, but thoughtful. "I wanted to thank you again," she said as they sat on a bench, "and also to say goodbye in a way." He turned to her, surprised. "Goodbye," she nodded slowly. "I've realized something important. That night and everything after helped me see my own strength, but I don't want to lean on you forever. That wouldn't be fair to either of us." He respected her honesty. "I understand. I'm going to give life another chance," she continued. "Not because I'm afraid of being alone, but because I finally believe I still matter." He smiled. "You always did." She looked at him warmly. "You helped me remember that." They sat quietly for a moment, watching leaves fall from the trees. "You know," she said, "people talk about big moments changing lives, but sometimes it's a chair pulled out at the right time, a conversation, a person who stays." He felt his throat tighten slightly. "I didn't do much," she shook her head. "You did enough." That was the last time they met alone. After that, their contact slowly faded, naturally and peacefully. No anger, no sadness, just acceptance. For him, something else began to change too. He found himself opening up more to friends, to family, even to himself. He apologized where he needed to. He forgave where he could. He stopped replaying the past and started paying attention to the present. One day, while visiting his parents, his mother said, "You seem lighter these days." He smiled. "I feel lighter." She looked at him closely. "Did you find answers?" "No," he replied honestly, "but I learned how to ask better questions." At work, he became more patient. When conflicts arose, he listened instead of reacting. When mistakes happened, he focused on solutions instead of blame. People noticed. Slowly, trust grew around him. One evening, he ran into his ex by chance at a grocery store. It was awkward at first, but then something unexpected happened. They talked. Not about the past, not about regrets, just about life, work, family, plans. "I'm glad you're doing well," she said. "So are you," he replied. Before they parted, she said something that stayed with him. "You know, what you did for my mother helped me too. It reminded me that kindness can exist even after love ends." He nodded. Sometimes endings don't have to be cruel. As he walked away, he realized how far he had come. The unthinkable thing he once did no longer felt unthinkable at all. It felt human. Weeks later, he received one final message from her mother. "I wanted you to know I went on that date," it read. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. I wasn't afraid this time. Thank you for being part of my journey. He read the message slowly, then replied, I'm glad you went. I wish you peace. He put his phone down and looked around his apartment. It no longer felt empty. It felt quiet in a good way. That night, as he lay in bed, he understood something clearly. Some people enter our lives not to stay, but to remind us who we are capable of being. And because of that reminder, both of them were moving forward, stronger, calmer, and no longer afraid of sitting alone. Time passed quietly after that, the way it usually does when life is finally allowed to breathe. Days turned into weeks and weeks into months. Nothing dramatic happened, yet everything felt different. The change was not outside him, but inside. He no longer replayed the cafe scene every night. Instead, it settled into memory like a soft lesson, something he carried without pain. The loneliness that once followed him home no longer felt so heavy. He still lived alone, still cooked for one, still returned to a quiet apartment. But now the silence felt peaceful instead of empty. One morning, he woke up early and went for a walk before work. The city was calm, streets almost empty. As he walked, he noticed small things he had ignored before, the sound of birds, the smell of fresh bread from a nearby shop, the way sunlight touched the buildings. He realized he was present, truly present. That realization made him smile. At work, opportunities slowly opened. A project he had once doubted himself on was finally completed, and his manager praised his patience and clarity. Colleagues came to him more often for advice, not because he had all the answers, but because he listened without judgment. Listening had become his strength. One evening, while scrolling through his phone, he saw a message from an old friend inviting him to a small gathering. Normally, he would have found an excuse to avoid it. Crowds reminded him of what he had lost, but this time he replied yes. At the gathering, he met people he had not seen in years. There was laughter, shared memories, and quiet understanding. At one point, he found himself telling the cafe story, not with emotion or drama, but with honesty. The room fell silent as people listened. That took courage, someone said. He shook his head. It took kindness. Later that night, as he walked home, he realized something important. He was no longer defined by his breakup, his regrets, or his past mistakes. He was defined by the choices he made afterward. A few days later, he received an envelope in the mail. Inside was a handwritten note. He recognized the writing immediately. It was from her, not her mother, his ex. I wanted to write this instead of saying it quickly, the note read. What happened months ago changed how I see many things. I spent a long time blaming you, blaming myself, blaming timing. But I understand now that we were two people doing the best we could with what we knew then. Thank you for treating my mother with respect. Thank you for reminding me that kindness doesn't end with love. I wish you peace. He folded the letter carefully and placed it in a drawer. Not to hide it, but to honor it. That night he slept deeply. Sometime later, while standing in line at a bookstore cafe, he met someone new. It was not dramatic. No sudden sparks or loud moments. Just a simple conversation about a book they both liked. They talked. Then talked again another day. Slowly, carefully, without rushing. He noticed how different he felt this time. There was no fear of loss, no pressure to impress. He allowed things to grow naturally or not grow at all. He had learned that presence mattered more than control. One afternoon, while sitting alone with his coffee, he thought about that first night again. The empty chair, the decision to sit, the quiet courage it took to stay. He realized something that surprised him. The unthinkable thing he did was not sitting beside his ex's mother. The unthinkable thing was choosing kindness when it was inconvenient. That choice had changed many lives, hers, his ex's, and his own. Months later, he ran into her mother one last time, unexpectedly, at a busy market. She looked well, confident, peaceful. They greeted each other warmly. I wanted you to know, she said, I'm doing well, truly. "I can see that," he replied. She smiled. "I hope you know something." "What's that?" "You didn't save me," she said gently. "You reminded me I could save myself." He nodded. "And you reminded me of who I want to be." They parted with smiles, no unfinished feelings left behind. That evening, as he sat by his window watching the city lights, he reflected on the journey. It began with pain, moved through confusion, and ended in understanding. No rules were broken, no lines crossed, only hearts softened. He understood now that life doesn't always reward loud actions. Sometimes it rewards quiet ones, the decision to sit, to listen, to stay. And if anyone asked him later what changed his life, he wouldn't talk about success or love or timing. He would talk about a woman sitting alone, a chair pulled out, and a moment where kindness mattered more than fear. That was the unthinkable thing. And it turned out to be the most human choice of all.